All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast. Today is Monday the 18th. It's a beautiful Monday outside in Knoxville, Tennessee. As the news wire, it was buzzing last night, and certainly we will get into all the big news around Tennessee football and the news that came down on Sunday night. But first, got to get my co-host here in the room. My name is Rick Butler. Also joined with me is, of course, Ryan Schumpert and Ryan Sylvia, who might have even brought a guest to the show today, if we can kind of see it in the background a little bit there.
Yeah, she might be sleeping on the bed back there. That's Ruby, our beautiful dog in the background. Hopefully she'll not make her voice known, but she might pop her head up a couple times and say what's up.
There you
Yes or
go.
no
Shump, how you
named.
doing?
Good. I'm doing well. Yes or no named after Ruby Whitehorn.
No, it was a dog that we got her when she was older, so you can't change the name when the dog's older.
Yeah.
Now,
That's just selfish.
does it mean that my girlfriend's favorite lady vol is Ruby Whitehorn now because her dog and Ruby Whitehorn are the same name? Yeah, it does. So it is a happy coincidence there.
Okay, I love it. But no, doing well and excited. We were already planning on doing the podcast today, and had some good stuff to get into, and all the more after, like you said, Rick, the quarterback news on Sunday night.
Yeah, and it's actually funny because, as you guys obviously know, things kind of got switched around Sunday morning for us. We were supposed to have a Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening recording session. Ended up pushing that back until Monday morning, which is right now. And that ended up working pretty good because now we have a new headline to talk about. But two quick pieces of housekeeping, although I can only think of one off the top of my head right now. Oh, no, I got both. First piece of housekeeping is be on the lookout. We're going to be talking about it soon over on RockyTopInsider.com. But Ryan, Sylvia, and I recently got to go film this great college football Tennessee season preview over with our good friends at WATE last week. That is going to be coming out soon. We got the pleasure of working with KCK and Sam Rothman on that one. It was a little bit of a TV situation for us. So we got to bring our bright and shining faces over to the television set, and I don't believe that's going to be on main Channel 6 channel, but it is going to be on the WATE app. So that's going to be a big thing to look out for. You can download it on your televisions. We will give you more information as it goes. That's something I've done before, but Sylvia, that was new for you working with our WAT partners over in the TV studio. What'd you think of that about that one?
Yeah, it's fun. My first time over. Obviously, we've known the WAT folks over there for a long time, but it's my first time actually there in the studio. So that was fun to see, how the production is made, the behind the scenes magic and all that. But I thought it went well. I thought it was fun. I'm excited to do some more with them as we'll partner with them a little bit more throughout this football season on both sides of things. Excited to get them on some of our stuff. Excited to hop in on some of their stuff. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, no doubt. That's going to be something exciting to look forward to. So again, just stay tuned. We'll give you plenty of ways to watch that. It was about a 30-minute production, I would say. I think they were very timely with things, so I think it was exactly 30 minutes. But that was a fun one. Just kind of broke down Tennessee offense, Tennessee defense, some of the scheduling notes about the season coming up, and I will say there was a little bit of quarterback battle competition. Now we know what the result of that is. So, you can still find some good nuggets and tidbits in there as well. But certainly big news coming down on Sunday night, which we'll get to in a minute. But just one more quick piece of housekeeping. I appreciate you guys coming over to the house on Friday night. Had a little RTI grill session at my own landing pad of, now that I've gotten settled in with my wife after we got married over the spring. But you guys came over. We watched a little Tennessee Titans football. We watched a little U.S. amateur golf. We grilled some burgers. We grilled some veggies. It was a good time all around for the RTI guys.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's thanks to you. You did all the hard work. So appreciate you having us. And you good lead in. Shout out Jackson Harrington. Awesome run at the U.S. Amateur this week for Fridge out of Dixon, Tennessee. Also, he finishes runner up, one of 3 Tennessee players ever to make the finals. No vols ever won, so we're still looking to knock that door down. But also, this is a great pivot. This is great radio, great podcasting, guys. Shout out Josh Heupel for naming Joey Aguilar his starting quarterback right as Jackson Harrington lost. He was taking the heat off of him. He said, "Jackson, you've had a great week. We don't want anybody to put the heat on you because you lost in the championship. You don't deserve any of the heat. We got a starting quarterback. Let's change the Vol Sports conversation to the starting quarterback battle."
Yeah. Jackson Harrington rightfully got all the praise and recognition throughout the weekend. And again, not that he wasn't deserving of the great run to the finals on Sunday evening, but you're right. Maybe a contender for good guy move of the year.
Yeah,
Josh
at
Heupel's
least of the
taking the
week.
heat. Yeah, at least of the week. That's for sure. Now, and I know we're going to get into the quarterback battle. We're almost 6 minutes in already, but just a last question on that. Is there some sort of master storyline for him? I saw some people texting about it. I think I might be saw it on social media. You guys would know better, but is there any kind of master's connection to what he was able to do at that run? Did he have to win it to make it, or am I just completely wrong?
No, by making the championship, he qualifies for the 2026 Masters and U.S. Open.
Wow, it's pretty exciting.
Yep. So he'll be in both of those next year, and certainly a big sophomore season likely on the way for him, rocking the orange and white between now and then.
Yeah, there you go. So certainly something good to look forward to on the UT golf side of things. But all right, we're almost 7 minutes in. Let's get to the conversation that everybody is looking for. Joey Aguilar, the transfer quarterback from App State and UCLA, named the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Volunteers on Sunday night. Obviously, a battle took place during fall camp, not one that happened during spring camp. That was when Nico Iamaleava was still on the team. Joey Aguilar was still over in Los Angeles with the Bruins. So this was the first time that Tennessee had all three quarterbacks out on the field together during organized team workouts over the last couple weeks. And Tennessee gets the news out yesterday that Joey Aguilar, number 6, is going to be leading the Volunteers into battle when they take on Syracuse here on August 30th. Sylvia, just kind of tell me about, from your perspective, how this all unfolded last night. And if I missed anything, just kind of during the quick little intro right there.
No, yeah, I thought it was something that I think we expected to happen. I don't know if we expected it to happen before we spoke with Josh Heupel. I guess we're talking to him on Tuesday, so 2 days in advance or 2 nights in advance, uh, you know, tells the team, and then it gets reported, and then the team officially announces it. So it was something that, like I said, I think we all expected it to be Joey Aguilar. Just maybe the timing was a little unexpected in terms of how quick it happened. Because you look back to 2021 as well, when the only other time Josh Heupel's had a quarterback battle, and that got announced, I believe it was the Monday of game week, and that was a Thursday kickoff, if you remember, then too, against Bowling Green. So there was not a lot of time between when Josh Heupel named Joe Milton that starter and when they actually hit the football field. So I think you do have to look at both sides of it, though. I think positive is now you have Joey Aguilar as the face of the offense, I guess. Like, he's able to take those first team reps. He's able to be the guy everyone looks to, not only throughout game week, but in this kind of mock game week that they're about to go through. So it gives him a little bit extra time to prepare for what things are going to look like this season. I guess the negative would be something along the lines of, now Syracuse knows who the quarterback is, but I don't think that's also too big of a deal. So I see it more as a positive, and it makes you think too. We'll find out a little bit more when we talk to Josh Heupel, but it makes you think he went out and earned it. He went out and grabbed it. Not that Jake Merklinger or George McIntyre did bad, but just the timing of it, I think, makes you feel like it was a somewhat easy decision for them in terms of what they saw from Joey Aguilar on the practice field and in those scrimmages.
Yeah, it felt like from the first scrimmage, which was 2 Saturdays ago now, and over that next week, kind of the third full week of practice, Aguilar began to separate himself from Merklinger, and then probably McIntyre too. But I mean, as we've talked about, he was maybe a dark horse candidate. It never felt very realistic that he was going to at least start the season by winning the starting quarterback job as a true freshman. So yeah, you're right. I think it was the timing of it more than anything that was interesting. But and this is just speculation on my part, but I imagine first day classes today. On Monday, I imagine Tennessee had a team meeting on Sunday night, and that's when Heupel just decided to go ahead and get everybody on the same page. I do think the thing that to me is worth noting that maybe flies under the radar a little bit about why it's important to have done it, or at least a benefit to have done it when he did. As we've talked about, and everybody just talked and written about, Tennessee's receivers have been so banged up during fall practice. We've been locked out of the last couple practices. My understanding is that the 3 projected starters have still not practiced together on the same day. It feels like they're getting closer to being able to get everybody out there at the same time as Chris Brazzell gets moving a little bit. Certainly Mike Matthews has been doing more and more His has been the most minor, and then hopefully for Tennessee State, Braylon Staley gets out there and is ready to roll. So with that in mind, I think if those guys do get out there this week, even if it is just 2 of them, but particularly if it's 3 of them, you want to force feed them reps with Joey Aguilar.
Yeah.
They're already behind on that. Joey Aguilar wasn't here in the spring. This is his first year starting, and they haven't been fully healthy as he's been splitting first team reps through the first, what's essentially 2.5, 3 weeks of fall practice. So I think it does make sense to get as many reps with those projected starting receivers with Aguilar as possible in these next, 13 days now until Tennessee, or 12 days now until Tennessee will kick it off against the Orange in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Ryan, I think that's the main point. And obviously, you want to get that continuity with the guys out there on the field. But I also think there is a leadership perspective, kind of component to it as well. And while Joey Aguilar has been in that battle and with the team throughout, again, fall camp this month and even going back to the summer workouts a little bit, he's not necessarily a longtime teammate of, many or most of these players in a sense of a way. And not that I don't think that there's any kind of continuity there, but it just kind of gives the team more time to get acclimated and to get excited and ramped up about what the Joey Aguilar start is going to mean and what it's going to look like. But then you're also giving your quarterback, I think, an upper hand into getting his mindset and sort of getting his message across to his teammates about what he wants to do as the leader of the offense. Again, not that wasn't necessarily happening beforehand, but if I'm Joey Aguilar and if I'm that starting quarterback, yeah, I obviously want to go out and I want my name to be called when the battle is said and done with. But I want as much chance as I can, as much time as I can to be able to talk to my teammates as that starting quarterback, to be able to go through fall camp workouts as that starting quarterback and be able to talk to the guys in the locker room or just in the building in the morning or at night or whenever it is, and be able to kind of assert myself as that leader. So, you talk about a guy with veteran experience in college football like Aguilar is, obviously a starter for the past 2 seasons. I think this just kind of gives him more time to sink back into a role that he's comfortable with as a starter, as a leader of the offense, and really just kind of get his teammates along with him. And again, just kind of get the message across about where he wants to take them this fall.
Wee woo, wee woo. Breaking news from Pete Thamel as of 3 minutes ago. The Syracuse Orange have named Notre Dame transfer Steve Angeli its starting quarterback going into the season opener. So I think that was kind of the expectation. We've talked about it a little bit on here. Syracuse is in a very similar boat. They had to go out and get a quarterback in the portal in the spring window. They got Steve Angeli, who did not look like he was going to win the Notre Dame job. But Steve Angeli, who Greg McElroy once compared to Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow is who the Vols are facing in the season opener.
And Tennessee had was it just maybe a social media thing? Was there actually a tie?
There was no actual connection there. It was just I mean, obviously there weren't too many quarterbacks in the portal in the spring, right. So any name that went out there, people were fixating on. But I don't think there was ever any connection between Tennessee and Angeli.
Sure. Syracuse did an all-time funny thing too during the spring window where they named a starter for no reason, which was they named
remember that
Ricky Collins, and Fran Brown went out and he was like, "Yeah, that's our starter." And then they went out and got Steve Angeli, who now wins the job. So that's great. That is a hilarious move that Syracuse did. And I like Fran Brown. I think he's done a fantastic job, obviously with Kyle McCord and company last year. This year could get rough for them, but long term, I think it looks good. But that remains a hilarious thing that Fran Brown did, is name a starter in the spring, bring in a spring transfer, and then that guy is now your starter week 1.
Well, you got to wonder also with Fran Brown. He's a former Georgia assistant. That's where he was at before going to Syracuse. Does he find a way to get a couple Georgia defenders from Athens and sneak them into Syracuse jerseys? You think Kirby might do him that favor?
Yeah.
I don't know who Georgia plays week 1. I know it's not a big game, so Georgia probably doesn't need him. Couple starting defenders, couple backups, probably. All the backups are probably better than what Syracuse has.
Think going on alone.
On the depth chart, get to third string true freshman, and it's probably better than what a lot of Syracuse has. So they could lose a few for a game or two.
That's great.
All right, here's back to Joey Aguilar. Here's a Joey Aguilar question I will pose both of y'all.
Okay.
Does Joey Aguilar, if healthy, so we'll say he stays healthy, does he start all 12 regular season games for Tennessee?
It's tough. I'm gonna I've gone back and forth on this offseason. My answer's been no for a good part of this offseason. I'm gonna say yes because I think the schedule shapes out that you're winning enough games that you don't feel like you need to make that move. Now, if they start losing games, I think it's gonna be I think the leash to start the season is gonna be pretty short. You lose to Syracuse, the leash is tiny. I don't think they'll lose to Syracuse. So assuming you beat Syracuse, you beat ETSU, you lose to Georgia, you beat UAB, then you get into that bulk of the SEC slate. As long as you don't kind of blow up to start it against Mississippi State in those games, I think by the end of the season, you're probably still looking, and we'll do, next time we talk on the show, we'll do more of a game by game predictions. But it feels like a 9-3 team, just the way the schedule shapes out. Like on paper, it might be an 8-4 team, but you just don't play too many tough SEC games outside of the ones that you're expected to. So I think this team's probably 9-3, which in hand makes me think if you're 9-3 and you're going into the probably against Florida with 2 losses and things like it's going to be tough to make a change at quarterback. So I'll say yes, but it's a very tentative yes, because I've said previously in this offseason no to that exact question, that I think that there will be a point in the year where you probably do see Jake Merklinger. But right now, like you said, 12 days from kickoff, I'll go yes, but I'm not 100% confident on it.
I'm going to say yes a little bit more confidently, in the fact that this is something I guess I certainly could be wrong about at some point in the year. Maybe there comes to a point where Tennessee's defense really is playing with their hair on their fire, and maybe Joey Aguilar has a little bit too much risk reward to his game, and some of those things are going in the negative direction, and Tennessee decides that they want to go with maybe a bit of a more safe option, and perhaps that safe option is Jake Merklinger. But I just continue to go back to what Joey Halzle talked about at the beginning of the preseason, saying that a lot of this summer, I guess, for the Tennessee coaching staff, and who knows, maybe it was a little bit of coach speak, maybe it was a little bit of hyperbole, but he said that a lot of what Tennessee has been doing this offseason has been trying to figure out ways to get that explosive offense back. You know that Tennessee's going to have a good running game to kind of keep things stable on the ground. I think that Joey Aguilar gives them a great chance to continue to do that. And maybe without a lot of time on the field for Merklinger, we don't know what he would necessarily look like in that role. But I think that Joey Aguilar just kind of gives them the, I don't know, just the aggressive mindset to be able to go out and try and continue to stretch the ball down the field. You have a guy who, as we've talked about on the show before, as a lot of people have talked about, he's not necessarily afraid to throw passes. He's not necessarily afraid to try to fit the ball into tight windows. So I'm going to say yes a little bit more confidently, just because I think that Joey Aguilar fits what Tennessee at its core wants to do. Now, again, could I be wrong at some point in the season, and maybe Tennessee doesn't necessarily look that way, or maybe they backtrack on that to an extent? Then yeah, I could absolutely be wrong on that. But I'm going to say yes a little bit more confidently. And you're right. If the wheels fall off the bus, then yeah, you're making a change. You're putting a new tire on the vehicle. But I'm going to say yes a little bit more confidently. Ryan, what say you on the question that you posed?
I think the thing I would say to your point, Rick, I think that's more of why he won the job. And I wrote about that, the 3 reasons why Joey Aguilar made the most sense is that he is the one I think that throws the best deep ball. He gives them the best chance to push explosive plays down the field. And certainly if he does that, he's going to start all 12 games. If Tennessee can get back to the explosive passing game that they've had, unless he just makes an incredible amount of mistakes, which has obviously been a question. Sylvia, I'm kind of on the same thought process of how you described it. It feels, I think, just from this last week of it feeling clear that he was going to win the job and has been Tennessee's best quarterback, it makes it feel like, yeah, he's going to start all 12 games.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll hold strong to what I said, or how I felt most of the offseason, that he won't start all 12 games. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm probably tipping my hand at our season predictions. To me, if Tennessee has lost a third game by the time they play New Mexico State, which is third to last game of the year, New Mexico State, Florida, Vanderbilt, they've lost 3 games at that point. I think somebody else gets a shot at it, and that's kind of where I'm leaning towards what I think will happen. And I also think there's also a scenario where even if Tennessee hasn't lost 3 games, the offense just looks bad and they find a way to beat Arkansas, Mississippi State. I think there's a chance Tennessee would look to shake things up too. So I'll say no. I'll say somebody else gets a crack at it at some point.
I think we're on the same page there, because I completely agree. New Mexico State feels like that pivotal week where if you've lost 3 games by that point, and essentially, I mean, it's not your playoff hopes are done once you lose a 3rd game. So once you get to that point that you're out of the playoff race, yeah, maybe it does make a little bit of sense to go to Jake Merklinger and try to get him prepped for the rest of his career, unless you are past that New Mexico State game and that 3rd loss is to Florida. And then at that point, you just have 1 game left, and it probably makes sense.
Yeah.
Go Joey Aguilar that game, and then maybe you can try to insert Jake Merklinger or someone else in the bowl game if you really want to go that path. But like you said, maybe it tips my hand too, because I have right now Tennessee only having 2 losses at that point in the season, which is why I think it makes sense that if that's the case, why would you switch things up when you have a theoretical shot at making the playoff at that point? Where on your side, if you think they have 3 losses at that point, then yeah, playoff shots over. You probably aren't performing to the standard you want to, and it makes a lot more sense to maybe try to make a move there instead. So I think we're on the same path there. It just kind of depends how the schedule shakes out, which is also why I'm so tentative to say 100%, yeah, Joey Aguilar's going to start all 10 or all 12 games, because there are some games in there that they could very well lose, and then that definitely changes some things up.
Yeah, I do think this is the scenario I would say. I think there's a real – I just think they could roll out of Bama, which what at that point would be 5-2, if I'm not mistaken. 5-2, I think. The Bama games, they'd lost to Georgia and Bama and won everything else. Syracuse, UAB, ETSU, Mississippi State, Arkansas. 5-2.
5-2 headed to Kroger Field.
Yeah, I just think there's a chance they could be 5-2, and their offense could have looked horrible for 7 games.
Oh,
and if you lose to Bama, and certainly Bama on the road was a team that could make their offense look real lifeless, feeling like, all right, we need to switch things up. We have, don't love it going on the road, but it is Kentucky. I think there's a real chance Kentucky looks horrible at this point in the season, and you feel like you can win with another quarterback, and you're trying to get some juice for a big Oklahoma game, especially if John Material looks good and Oklahoma's offense is like, you're looking at the Oklahoma game and you're like, you're going to have to score 24, 27 points to win that game, and the offenses look bad. I just think there's also that scenario where they could make the move before being eliminated from the playoffs. So, and then the last thing I'll just throw in, and we can pivot to some other stuff. To me, the big question now is who's the backup. My guess is Josh Heupel does not name a backup this week. And my guess is it will be Jake Merklinger. If Joey Aguilar got hurt, knock on wood, don't want this to happen, but theoretically, if Joey Aguilar got hurt the first drive of the season against Syracuse, my guess it would be Jake Merklinger. I think that could change by a month. By the scenario I'm talking about where the offense looks bad and they're trying to get a jump start at Kentucky, I could easily see it being George McIntyre. So that's the other thing I'll be really curious to see this week is if Heupel, names a backup or if he says competition remains ongoing there.
I think the depth chart will have a big or for the second string quarterback. And I think if he's asked about it during that media availability, he'll say, like you pretty much just said, competition's ongoing. That's something we'll assess throughout the year and something that they're going to have to earn every single way, and coach speak his way out of it. But I think, like you said, if Joey Aguilar goes out in the first drive and gets injured and has to come out of the game, I would be pretty stunned if it wasn't Jake Merklinger on the field to replace him. It's just optically with the depth chart and things like that. I think they'll play that card close to their chest and call it an or.
Yeah, and Shump, to your point, there does kind of become the conversation about just what happens if you get towards late in the season, you get towards that final quarter of the season when you are looking at those last 3 games. And does Tennessee want to kind of look to the future a little bit more? Maybe this season it's kind of hit its ceiling and where it wants to go. Because I agree with you guys. I think that if something happens in the first couple of games of the season, then it's probably Jake Merklinger going in. But who knows? Maybe you get to the end point in the season and George McIntyre has continued to progress through practices. Maybe something has hindered Jake Merklinger. I don't know. It could be a number of different things. And maybe Josh Heupel does say, yeah, I really believe in what McIntyre is going to be, and I think he's got a good chance to be it next year, and I want to see him get reps. So I think you're right. I think it is a really fluid situation as to what just kind of the variation of Tennessee's quarterback room will be. And to both of your great points from a minute ago, I think a lot of that just kind of depends on where in the season you're talking about. What is ahead for Tennessee? What's sort of left for Tennessee? Has the car kind of reached top speed already? Something along those lines. So I think the schedule really dictate a couple of those conversations.
I do think there's just a tricky aspect too of like if it's going to be McIntyre, like if he starts at some point, like seeing what you have there, wanting to, get some game reps for him with like not starting him 8 games and him playing well enough that you wonder if Faison Brandon's even going to come to campus anymore. Like that's a tricky balance, I think. Not that I have a right answer of how they should handle it, but that's just something I'll be curious to see what that looks like.
It is tough to, I think, balance those types of things. I think that Tennessee particularly is a staff that's not going to get too far ahead of themselves. Like if they think George McIntyre could be the guy, I don't think they're going to, pull any punches just for the sake of making sure that Faison gets to campus. Because at the same time, too, I don't, even if George McIntyre ends up being great, that still doesn't necessarily make me think Faison wouldn't end up at Tennessee for his freshman season. So I think that they'll just do whatever they think gives them the best chance to win. But to me, it is that Oklahoma game still. That's such a pivotal game. I don't want to jump the gun too much in terms of the season preview, game-by-game preview we'll do next time. But that Oklahoma game just feels so pivotal in so many ways for the season, but also like we're just talking about that quarterback competition where if you go into that game, and it's Oklahoma's one of the teams that's so tough to pick. Are they going to be really good this year? Is John Mateer going to pan out and that offense is going to be incredible and they're going to be a really tough out? Or is Brent Venables going to get in the way and they're going to be not so great like they were last year, where there was some offseason buzz about Oklahoma last year and everything just fell apart pretty early, really starting with that Tennessee game, it felt like, and it kind of just started to go downhill really fast. I'm curious to see what Oklahoma team it'll be by that point in the year once November gets here and exactly how Tennessee approaches that, because that very well could be your third loss in the schedule. And if you get to that point with 3 games left, maybe you do go to a younger guy with New Mexico State around the corner and get him, his bearings under him at that point to try to get ready to go win the Swamp. So that game feels just so pivotal in so many ways.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
That game for me is really the deciding factor between 8 and 9 wins on the schedule. It's a big one with the Sooners coming into Neyland Stadium later on in the year. But of course, Joey Aguilar will be Tennessee's starting quarterback for it. In the 2 years at App State that he spent with the Mountaineers, 60.1 completion percentage, 6,760 total yards, 56 total touchdowns, and 24 total interceptions. He carried the ball about 140 times. We talked about it. He's a gunslinger with his arm, but he's not afraid to lower the shoulder in a couple of the highlight packages that you've seen. 456 rushing yards and 5 total touchdowns on the ground. Again, as we've talked about, the better of those 2 numbers, if you split it up, do come in the 2023 season. But that sort of leads us into what we're going to be talking about next. And that's a little bit with the quarterback conversation, but also broadening out a little bit. As Sylvia mentioned a minute ago, we will be coming back on the podcast next week, or maybe later this week. At some point here in the near future, we are going to be going over those game-by-game predictions. It'll be a little bit easier, especially now that we know Tennessee's going to have a starting quarterback, although we don't know what that's going to look like for the whole thing, as we've been talking about. But for today, to kind of wrap up the rest of the show here, how about some superlatives? How about some kind of predictions about what the season's going to be having? Ryan, you and I did this last year, and I can't remember how they went. I do know that I think I had a prediction about the edge rusher, the Leo position. I don't think it went well. I remember being a little bit shaky as I had mentioned that last year. I feel a little bit better, though, about what I'm going to be talking about this year. And now we have Sylvia to add to the fold as well. So just kind of a couple of predictions and superlatives here going on. As always, as we talk about these, if you've got your own answers, go ahead and leave them in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, try to not match, but try to add in your own voice to the conversation here. This is just all fun and games as we try to sort of get a good idea on what this Tennessee football season will look like. Now that I bring it up, let's go ahead and start with who we've been talking about this whole time, Joey Aguilar. Again, we had mentioned it a second ago. 56 total touchdowns, 33 in 2023, 23 in 2024. Ryan, the first one that you wrote down here on our prep sheet is Joey Aguilar over under 24.5 total touchdowns. Again, that is passing and rushing. He has hit that in both of the last 2 seasons. It was 36 total in 2023, 25 total in 2024. Over under is set at 24.5. Does he continue to match the numbers that he set with the Mountaineers, or is it a little bit below? Whoever wants to go ahead and attack it.
Yeah, I'll start first on this one. I was Las Vegas here. I said all these numbers.
Yes, you have.
I was looking at a balance of what Aguilar did. Also, Nico had 22 total touchdowns last year, 19 passing, 3 on the ground. I think for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to say he does start all 12 games, just because, I mean, my answers are easy. If I don't think he starts all 12 games, he's going to hit the under probably, certainly on touchdowns and hopefully on interceptions.
You don't know if that's going to be a factor.
Yeah, he could still hit the over on interceptions if he doesn't
Right.
start all 12 games, I guess, possibly.
The interception could hurt the touchdown number if he doesn't play all 12 games.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the under on touchdowns solely because I don't think he's going to run for as many. I don't think he'll run for 3. Also, these are Nico's numbers counting the playoffs. I know he had 1 rushing touchdown in that game. I can't remember if he got a second one. I do think he will. I do think Joey Aguilar, if he starts all 12 games, will throw for more than 19 touchdowns, which what Nico did last year.
Yes.
I just don't think you're going to see Tennessee use his legs as much in the red zone. So I'll go under, but narrowly. I mean, again, obviously I'm setting the line, so I think basically all of these I think will be close. But I would narrowly go under.
I like these lines. I think these were 2 well set bookie lines here. I'll agree. I think he goes under touchdowns, and I think it's probably. I was looking, and I did the same thing. I immediately pulled up the Nico stats because I feel like they're gonna want to use him in a similar way, as in, let's rely on the defense. The defense is going to be one of the better ones in the country again, and it's going to be the reason that you win a lot of games this year. So just don't mess up on offense. And that kind of felt like the mentality a lot of the times with Nico at quarterback a year ago was just get the ball to Dylan Sampson, put the ball in the air when you need to, and just take what's there and try not to turn the ball over and try not to do the only things that'll make you lose that game, which would be turn the ball over and giving the other team good field position. I think that'll be a similar mentality with Joey Aguilar a lot of the season. And for that reason, I think he passes Nico's passing touchdowns. But I agree. He's probably got 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns. Maybe he makes something happen in the red zone and he skirts in. So if you look at 21, 22 through the air, which is more than what Nico gave you last year, but then those 1 or 2 on the ground, that's still just shy of that total touchdown mark. And then I have it at 6 interceptions. So I love the line at 5.5, but I'll go just over. I don't think it'll be ridiculously over there. Like if he throws 8 even, I'd be a little surprised, because I just don't think they're going to put him in a bunch of situations where he can make those mistakes on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I hate to keep things a little bit boring, at least as far as this question goes, but I don't have a lot of disagreements with what you guys are saying. I do think it's going to be above Nico's numbers from last year, but I do have the under as well. And part of that reason, the only other thing I can kind of tack on is that I think that when Tennessee gets to the red zone, and there's no doubt that that Joey Aguilar, in my opinion, could throw them through the red zone and to the end zone. I think there could be a couple of big splash plays for Tennessee throughout the season that gets them into the end zone. But I think that Tennessee's running back room are going to be fiends when it comes to the final 20 yards of the field.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, to Ryan's point of less rushing touchdowns, I think there's going to be a ton of opportunities for Tennessee's trio of running backs, however that kind of pans out, to be able to put the ball in the end zone. I've become increasingly bullish on what Tennessee's offensive line could be throughout the fall. And I've certainly gained stock in what Tennessee's running back room could be as well. So I think whether that's a Star Thomas powering his way into the end zone, the craftiness of a Deshaun Bishop, maybe Peyton Lewis with the strength that he's added into his game. I just think that when Tennessee gets that final 20 yards of the field, they're going to want to put their big guys in the trenches. They're going to want to run the ball, and it's going to be less with Joey Aguilar. But again, I also felt like Joey Aguilar had a better chance to start all 12 games. So I guess that kind of comes down to more to the interceptions part. So I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the line for interceptions, Ryan did set at 5.5. Sylvia said he went over. I'm going to go over as well. Just again, kind of playing to that longevity aspect of it. But that being under the 24.5 total touchdowns does not necessarily mean I'm down on what he can be as a quarterback. I just think that when they get to the red zone, that's an area that Tennessee's running backs are going to shine. Shumpert, you set your own line for interceptions. The last one to answer it at 5.5. Where are you thinking for that one?
I'll go under. I think and it's me going with here's a take. Here's a take for you. It'll either be over and over or under and under. I think if they're not hitting a bunch of explosive plays in the pass game, they're going to pivot to a lot of what they did last year. Like Sylvia said, a lot of 12 personnel. and just try to play a little risk adverse. So if they're hitting more plays down the field and they're able to make some explosives and the passing game looks better, I could very easily see a world where it goes over. But I'll say it goes under. 5 interceptions for Nico last year, 5 interceptions for Joe Milton in 23. Those are the 2 most of anyone under Josh Heupel at Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, there you go. That's the quarterback aspect of things. Moving on to the running backs. I don't know about you guys. For me, this was my hardest one to pick out because of just the unknowns about what the rotation is going to look like, about kind of who's got the hot hand per game. I think there's a lot more variables that kind of go into this one than the rest of them we're going to talk about. But let's talk about the Tennessee running room, and that is who leads Tennessee in rushing yards, who leads Tennessee in touchdowns. And I guess as you answer those, we will get the answer of, are your picks different? Or is this a situation where, hey, Dylan Sampson was a monster for Tennessee, and not saying that anyone's going to beat Dylan Sampson, but he obviously ran the ball down the field, and then when he ran it down the field, he ran it into the end zone. That was an often a 1-2 punch from him. Is this a situation where Tennessee kind of relies on a guy to get them down the field more, and then they have a bit of a vulture? Does Tennessee have a vulture this year who can really kind of punch it into the end zone once they're within the 10-yard line, or something else? Shump started last time, so Sylvia, I'll go to you first. Where did you land on that? Did you have a time like me where this might have been kind of the trickiest one to pick from?
Well, I think you could make the argument pretty easily for all 3 guys for both categories. So it is tough. Like you could convince me on any of the 3 guys for both. So I did have, I don't want to say a tough time. I got to my solution somewhat quickly, but I could definitely, like I said, be convinced in a bunch of different directions. What I ended up with was I'd start Thomas for yards. I think he'll be the guy that takes over the most number of games, because I believe Darrell Sims in that it will just be a riding the hot hand type of situation. And last year, obviously, Dylan Sampson was the hot hand in every game that he was healthy for. So that's why he played so much. I think this year will be a little bit more of a rotation, just because you'll have to kind of figure out who's hot and who's not. I think Star Thomas will be that guy more often than not. For touchdowns, though, I went to Sean Bishop. He reminds me of maybe what Jabari Small was in 21 and 22 a little bit, where the rushing yards weren't like touching 1,000 or anything like that, but he just put up stupid numbers. He was always in the end zone. 13 touchdowns in 2022, 9 touchdowns in 2021. I think Deshaun could be used in a somewhat similar way where, yeah, he's a big part of the offense as they march down the field, but particularly once you get into the red zone, Deshaun Bishop's a tough runner. He's an old school guy in a hard-nosed type of fashion. So I think that'll be the one that finds his way to the checkerboards more than the other 2.
Yeah, I went with Peyton Lewis for yards just because I think has the chance to be the most explosive guy and have the most big runs in that room. Like, I don't necessarily think he leads them in carries, or at least I feel less conviction about that. But I'll say he leads them in yards. And yeah, I went with Deshaun Bishop too for touchdowns. Kind of the same logic, largely just on vibes more than anything. I don't think anything like tells me that's like, oh yeah, they're going to go to Deshaun Bishop a ton in the red zone. I do think what Sylvia said was all accurate. I think he's a good, but between the tackles runner, a good hard-nosed runner, maybe a guy that they just trust a little bit more in those short yard situations, and probably just a little bit of hedging my bet on it too.
I'm guess I'm kind of glad with my pick then. I'm filling out the trio here, and I have Deshaun Bishop with yards, and I have Stark Thomas for touchdowns.
Okay.
And again, just kind of like you guys, I don't exactly know how that's going to look out. Sylvia agreed with you. I do believe Darrell Sims when he says that it's going to kind of be the hot hand. Who's looking the best going into the game that week, who's practicing the best, who's picking up the system, the specific system about what they want to do against that defense. But I also, maybe I'm buying too much stock into, I don't know if it's going to be coach speak. I don't think it is, but what still resonated me with from talking to Sims last week is him talking about Star Thomas as a complete back. And you can sort of take that and make the case for him being the guy who gains the most yards because he's got a lot of versatility to his game. But I think that sort of versatility does does bode well for a red zone type of situation when you do have multiple things you can do to get the ball into the end zone in a tight window of field to work with. So I think, and as far as the question, are those 2 guys the same? It could be. I don't necessarily think it will be, just because they have got, 3 guys who can do different things. And I think 3 guys who have the ability to, either take the ball down the field or score it in the red zone. But I don't know. I guess it could be, but I don't think it will. But I don't think it necessarily has to be. And I think that Tennessee's got enough, kind of tools in the tool belt to where they can make a lot of things happen. And by the end of the season, maybe those things do kind of stretch out a little bit.
All right, we ready for receivers?
Go for it.
All right, so I think we're probably gonna, at least receiving yards, I'll hit the same answer. So let's start here. Receiving yards, receiving touchdowns. Who leads Tennessee? Rick, I'll give you a break from speaking and go to Sylvia first.
I got Mike Matthews for both, and I think it's just because he'll be on the field the most. I think you still have to see it to believe it with Chris Brazzell to a certain extent. He didn't play as much last year as he will this year, assuming he's healthy, but he also wasn't overly productive throughout the entire season. He had the big memorable catch against Alabama, but it wasn't, a breakout season by any means. So I'll go Mike Matthews because I think they're going to have to rely on him a lot. I think we could end up seeing a little bit more of a rotation between Travis Smith Jr., the true freshman, and Chris Brazzell on the other side. And then it remains to be seen on the inside with Braylon Staley how much they'll rely on him with limited depth behind him compared to going to 12 personnel with 2 outside receivers on the field. So for those reasons, I go Mike Matthews for both just because, 1, I think he's good, but 2, I think he'll just be on the field a bunch.
I'll go Mike Matthews for sure for receiving yards. And I will be optimistic and say Mike Matthews for receiving touchdowns because I think that's the better scenario as opposed to what I think could be close as Miles Kitselman leading them and receiving touchdowns. And I don't think you want that.
I was going to say
no knock on Miles Kitselman. It just screams the passing game is struggling again. If Miles Kitselman,
not Mike Matthews, I think it's a tight end, and that could be Ethan Davis too because I think Ethan Davis is going to play a bunch this year. But I think if it's not Mike Matthews, it's a tight end.
Yeah, I think to that point, Sylvia, I was kind of thinking through some answers we'll get to later of like, we're predicting maybe some potential breakout players, and it just led to my thought of like, what would be the best case scenario? Who would be the best case scenario breakout players for Tennessee? I think Ethan Davis is up there. Like, how much 12 personnel they'd have to play for him to have a breakout year, I think would be big. But yeah, I just feel like Miles Kitselman is going to have 4 or 5 touchdowns, and I feel like pretty sure about that, and it'll be in that range. I'll say Mike Matthews gets to like 6.
Yeah.
Did you have a yardage set as well?
I did, but I was going to do that second. But you can go ahead and throw that in.
All right, I'll lead us off into it because I agree with you guys. I'm taking Mike Matthews from a receiving standpoint. Just with how dynamic he is, it's hard not to believe that even with spotlight pressure, because I do think that if I'm an opposing defense, I'm saying, hey, we need to really focus on Mike Matthews. He's their best and most talented guy. We've seen what Chris Brazzell is, and again, no knock on him, but I think that Mike Matthews has more dynamic element to his game. And then Braylon Staley, is he going to just sort of be used as a tool when needed? Is he going to have some sort of more expanded role? I think that's yet to be seen. So all signs point to Mike Matthews for that. As far as touchdowns, I agree with Mike Matthews just because, again, I think that with the way that Joey Aguilar wants to play, I think he's going to be looking for Mike Matthews. I think that's obviously going to be a go-to guy for him, not only when he gets in trouble, but when he wants to stretch the ball downfield. I think that's who he's going to be looking for. And I think by the end of the season, or at least by some point in the season, we'll see how the quarterback situation, kind of settles down. But I think that you're going to know that Mike Matthews is his go-to guy. And when quarterbacks get in trouble, I think they go to their go-to guy. You said it, if my notes are correct here, I think you said it at 749 yards.
I did, yes.
I'm going to say over for Mike Matthews. And again, I wasn't necessarily on the over when it came to touchdown passes, but I do think that Tennessee is going to be able to spread the ball out downfield in route to getting to the end zone. And then again, I think that's an area where running backs can take over. I just think that Mike Matthews is going to have the ability to, and again, we'll see what Tennessee eventually does with the offense based on the success that it's having. But I think he's going to have the opportunity to go and create routes down the field, across the middle of the field. I think he's going to be a guy who can take the ball and try to create space around the line of scrimmage. I just think that he's going to have a ton of chances to do that. So I'm higher on, Tennessee's passing game, at least sort of getting him the ball and being able to stretch the ball downfield. But just kind of going back to what you guys talked about a second ago with the tight ends, I'm high on the tight ends room collectively. Like I think when you look at their collective touchdowns, whether it's going to be a Kitselman or a Davis, I'm high on what they can do because even though I'm sitting here talking about the connection with Mike Matthews, I still see that tight end room being a nice, not necessarily escape route, but just a nice what is it? I guess maybe a security blanket for what Tennessee's passing attack can do, and for getting to the end zone. You saw that last year with how Miles Kitselman made that impact in his first year at the program. Now he's only getting more comfortable. So I'm high in the tight ends room overall, but I'm going to go with Mike Matthews for both the receptions and the touchdowns.
I'll go over. I've bounced back and forth on this a lot. I'll go over 749 yards for Matthews. Look, Tennessee's leading receiver last year was Dante Thornton with 661 yards. You know, I think it's almost just like a numbers game. Like I just go through Tennessee's receiving yards last year. Brew McCoy had 472, Squirrel White 381, 333 for Chris Brazel, Nimrod 121, Matthews 90, Webb 48. Like I just think there were so many guys that at least got catches. I just don't know if Tennessee's going to have that possibility this year. So I think Mike Matthews is going to have to get force-fed some reps, or force-fed targets, I guess I should say. And I'll say he goes over, though. Again, that's optimistic. I don't say that with a ton of confidence.
Yeah, I don't think it'll go too far over, but I had the over, and I looked at 2023 as well because that felt, I think the offense was more open with Joe Milton, but it was, maybe a closer receiver room as far as how deep they're going to get compared to last year where they had a bunch of different options. And Squirrel White was the leader in the clubhouse in receiving yards that year with 803. I don't know if Mike Matthews gets above the 800 mark like Squirrel White did that year. So I think it'll probably be somewhere between 750 and 800. But I'll go slightly over on the actual over-under there of 750 for Mike Matthews.
All right, sacks. This is you, Rick. You talked about running backs being the one you had the most issues with. I think this is it for me.
Okay,
I'll just go ahead and throw all three of these out there at once. Mm-hmm. Who leads Tennessee in sacks? Over under 7.5 sacks for the leader. Funny enough, last year 7.5 sacks is what James Pierce had.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was doing my research for this, and I wondered if that helped you set the line on that, or if it was just coincidental.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I think I had it maybe at like 7 was what I first had. Then I saw that and changed it briefly. And then do multiple vols get 5 sacks? So, Rick, I'll go to you to start it.
Okay. So, first off, I like the depth that Tennessee's Leo room presents, but I do think that there's going to need to be, some element of see it to believe it, right? You have Joshua Josephs, and I think you know what you're getting with him. He, to me, is who Tennessee's leading, sack getter is going to be. But then you also have Caleb Herring and Jordan Ross. So I think that Caleb Herring might have a bit of maybe a bit of a more rounded game right now, just from some of the reports that we heard coming out of fall camp and that we saw from ourselves. But as I talked about with, Sylvia knows this, as I talked about on the WATE preview show, I think Jordan Ross has one of the highest ceilings you could have. I think he's a dominant pass rusher who, once he gets on the scene and once he starts to find his groove, he's going to be a phenom at that spot. Now, I think there's an element to Jordan Ross and just sort of the youth of his career still about can he be a 3-down player to an extent, and can he be as effective in the run game as much as the pass game. But maybe that does not have to be seen right now because he's not necessarily that go-to guy. So all those words to say that I'm going to go with Joshua Josephs for the leading player with sacks. I'm going to say under 7.5 because, again, I think that there's a depth element to it. Not that if one guy gets it, the other guy can't get one. I think you could have guys get multiple in a game. That's perfectly feasible. But I'm also going to tentatively say no to the last question. Do multiple guys have 5? I think that you'll have all 3 of those guys get multiple potentially. But I think that 5 is a high number, again, especially looking at what James Pierce did with the 7.5. There'll be opportunities too. And again, I like that Leo room for Tennessee. I think they can do damage as long as they continue to progress throughout the season. As you see, guys kind of round their game off a little bit more, but I like what Jordan Ross can do. He's definitely my sleeper, kind of my underdog of, who could be a game changer, who could be a game wrecker, when they put things together. Jordan Ross just has a freakishly high ceiling, but I think that Joseph is obviously the leader in the room who's been waiting for this turn to step up, who's been waiting for, to be that spotlight player who's going after the quarterback. So those are my 3 answers for that one. The last one is the only one I'm a little bit tentative on. And some of that reason might be because I I think I skipped over that in the prep. That was the only one I wasn't prepared for. So I didn't put all my reason and my thought into it. But I'll be interested to see what you guys say as well.
I'll go. I think we'll probably all be in agreement. Joseph's leading the team in sacks, so I'll go with Joseph's there. He feels like the safe bet. I'll take under 7.5, and I'll take no one else gets to 5. However, pivot. I think 3 people get to 4+.
Okay.
Maybe even more than that. Which, if I had to guess, I'd probably go like a Tyree West and a Jordan Ross. I almost think the second questions or the third question there, can multiple get to 5, is more important. If you told me, you said, "Hey, Ryan Shumpert," I was going to say Ryan, but that could imply Ryan Sylvia. "Hey, Ryan Shumpert, would it be better for Tennessee for their leading sack guy to have 7.5 sacks, or for them to get multiple to get to 5?" I would say multiple to get to 5, because I just don't see the ceiling being that high for whoever this season as far as like a sack number. Like, I don't
Sure.
see anybody getting the double digits.
Nope.
So because of that, like, I think an over 7.5 probably looks like 8.5. I would say, all right, guarantee multiple with 5, that like someone across from Josh Josephs or someone else on the defensive line steps up as a threat to rush the passer that other teams have to worry about.
You say everyone's going to have Josh Josephs. Not so
Ooh,
fast, my friend. Give me Tyree West. I've been so high on
love it.
Tyree West. I've been fooled on him since the Citrus Bowl, where he had a
Yeah,
really,
he was
really
great.
nice season. And I was like, he is going to be a monster in 2024. And he had a good season. I was just ridiculously high on him going into the year. So he didn't reach my very high bar for him, but I still thought he had a really good year. I think this is the year, true senior season. The time's up, right? You got to make your money this year. It's his money year. You could play your way into a draft pick at this point. So I'll go Tyree West as the guy who leads there in sacks. I go under for the total amount of sacks for him. I just think it'll be super spread out. So I'll go yes on the other one. But I could see Tyree West leading the team with 5.5 sacks, and then a couple other guys being at 5, including a Josh Josephs, including a Jordan Ross, and a couple other guys. So I go yes to Tyree West, and then it'll be super spread out, and it'll be a thin margin.
Sneaky concern for me is the defensive line. Which it feels dumb to say, it really does, but I worry a little bit about the pass rush, and I worry about the defensive tackle depth. I've been worried about the defensive tackle depth, and all the more so if David Hobbs banged up. So
Right. Yeah. Big news
I
last
don't,
week.
yeah, I don't think they're gonna be like obviously terrible. And look, I wouldn't surprise me if they're really good on the defensive line, and I just look stupid. But there's enough concerns for me right now. It's something that I'm more concerned about than I've been for most of the offseason, I guess.
It's just the tackles for me. I'm not very concerned about the pass rush, considering that primarily comes from the edge, and I think they're really deep at both the edge spots at Leo and defensive end. The interior, it is thin. I know it sounds weird to say, and I know you get some comments that are like, "What are you talking about? The defensive line is thin." The defensive edges are good. They're
No,
deep.
they're not even close to thin. They're
The interior of the
incredibly
defensive line is undebatably thin. You go too far down the depth chart, and you're looking at guys that have not played SEC football or even close to SEC football, like not even Division I FBS football yet. And they could be good, and they could prove themselves, but it is thin. It is a question mark. I'll err on the side of it being a better unit than a bad unit, but it is thin, and there are question marks. There's no debating that.
Yeah, and I guess the thing on the edge, like, I think they're good at the edge. Like, I'm not worried about them being bad there. I just worry about someone stepping up and like them truly having a good pass rush that they can get home with 4 consistently. That would be more. I think I know they'll be really solid against the run. I know the ceiling or the floor is high as a pass rush. I know they're not going to be terrible, but can they be consistently really good? And like I'll continue to say, Omar Norman Lott is a very sneaky, huge loss for the pass rush. I mean, he was Tennessee's second best pass rusher last year. So, we talk about Pierce a ton. I think that's a huge loss. I don't think anyone on the interior is poised to become close to what he was from a pass rush threat. So those are kind of the things that make me concerned about the pass rush.
Moving on to next on the list. Well, this one I think is fairly obvious. If anybody doesn't have Jeremiah Teeland or Arian Carter, speak now, forever hold your peace. Leading tackler, I think that's who we would probably all have on that one. Interceptions is a good one, I think, and I'm glad you brought this up, Ryan. Who leads Tennessee in interceptions? The obvious answer, going back to last year, I think will be Jermon McCoy, with his ball hawking ability, his just top cornerback status, and he gets chances. He's on great receivers who quarterbacks, despite as talented as he is, quarterbacks are still wanting to throw their guy, the ball. So he's got opportunities, just like you saw last year against Alabama, just like you saw against, I believe it was Oklahoma and not Arkansas. I can't really remember correctly. But
Oklahoma.
thank you, does his recovery, which again, we still don't have a great timetable on. You can see the latest, at least, of what he's been doing at practice over on rectupinsider.com. Does his timetable give someone else an opportunity like Ricky Gibson to potentially take the reins in that conversation? And then my question for you guys as well, and sort of something I was thinking about and I frankly just didn't know the answer to, is somebody like Idris Farouk, which I think that we might be in consensus that he's going to win one of the safety spots. Is he a home run hitter kind of guy? Is Boo Carter potentially, a guy who, if he does see the field, what sort of impact could he make? Shump, which one are you going for that? Who leads Tennessee in interceptions? Is it a cornerback or is it somewhere else in the secondary?
Yeah, I'll tell you the one I sneaky flirted with was Jalen McMurray.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, I don't know, it doesn't feel great for Boo Carter playing a lot of football for Tennessee, at least early in the season, I should say. But I don't know. It's just the looming Boo thing makes it hard to pull the trigger on McMurray to lead the team in interceptions. I'll go Ricky Gibson, and I'll go ahead and I'll throw out another name too, but I'll go 2-for-1 on the next one, breakout defensive player. I'm going Ricky Gibson. I think Ricky Gibson has an all SEC type season. He, I thought, got steadily better as last season went on and was really solid, very much overlooked because of how good Jermon McCoy was. So, and there's been so much buzz around Colton Hood, and I think for good reason. I think Colton Hood's a good player, but I'm going to go Ricky Gibson, leads the team in interceptions. Just don't have enough. Turrentine would be another sneaky one I could see at safety. Before last year with Will Brooks, Tennessee safeties just hadn't had many interceptions in Tim Banks' scheme. So I'm more inclined to say that was a one-off thing with Will Brooks and not a trend we see continue.
This was the toughest one for me, and it's because, like you just said, the safety position has not produced a lot of interceptions outside of Will Brooks in this scheme. So I kind of ruled them out. I looked to the star position, and I had the same thought you did. It's going to be a lot of Jalen McMurray early, and then what does that look like as the season progresses? So you don't want to go there because the snaps are going to be inconsistent. The obvious choice is Jermod McCoy, but he's probably going to miss some time. It feels like he doesn't seem like he's game ready right now. So I don't want to go him if he's going to miss time. And then Colton Hood on the other side, if he's the guy to replace Jermod McCoy, well, if Jermod McCoy does come back, what does that mean for Colton Hood's snap? So the only spot that felt like it made sense is Ricky Gibson. He's never had an interception in his career. I know he's going just into his junior year, but he has no picks. So it's tough to pick a guy who has yet to have an interception to lead the team in picks. But that's what I ended up going with, is Ricky Gibson, just because of all those things I just listed. And it doesn't feel like it's he doesn't have a pick because he's not capable of it. It's just one of those things that, interceptions are funny because it means you're playing defense. It means you're in coverage to a certain poor extent that the quarterback thought he could get the ball there, right? It means you're not on his hip the entire time. So it is a funny stat to look at in some ways, but I'll go Ricky Gibson there, and I'll parlay it too into, like you said, breakout guys. I have Colton Hood listed as a breakout guy just because I don't think a lot of casual fans that, aren't locked in on the spring transfer portal window have fully picked up that he's going to play a lot of football this year, and he could be really good, particularly with Jermon McCoy's injury. And I also had Idris Farouk listed as a guy that Rick just mentioned as someone that's probably going to win a safety spot. I think Tennessee fans are going to like him a lot. And of course, I had to throw Tyree West in there too. If I think he's going to lead the team in sacks, that does mean he has a breakout year.
Boy, you guys said a lot there, and a lot of it I agree with. I think Gibson is the right pick just because of longevity at the cornerback spot. It's where you get so many opportunities to, and it's hard not to take a guy who, you guys are right, is due for a breakout season. I think he's going to have a chance to be that number one cornerback for a while. But just to switch things up, I'll still go with Jermon McCoy just so we don't all have the same answer. I think that when he does come back, if there is a small gap, maybe there's only one or two interceptions that's happened so far, he's still a guy who knows how to bait the quarterback. He's still a guy who knows how to go and high point the ball. He's still a guy who knows knows his angles and knows where to cut off quarterbacks' throws and things along that nature. And I also think he's gonna come back with something to prove. You're talking about a guy who is not only fighting to be a great part of the Tennessee defense this year, but a guy who's fighting to, raise his NFL draft stock as he projects to go into the NFL draft next year. And he's already been projected throughout the summer as a first round pick. But I think he's going to want to come back and show people that he's still got that same explosiveness. Whether he does or not, I think that's obviously yet to be seen. But he's going to want to show people that he's still got that ability. He can still make the right cuts to get in position. I think that Jermon McCoy just has such a great instinct and has a great fight for trying to get those ones. I think of the Alabama game where he fought to get that one in the end zone, or was it the Vanderbilt one that was maybe the diving interception in the end zone?
Well, circus.
Say that.
Little circus catch for that.
Yes. Yeah,
I was thinking about it with
catch, so.
what Sylvia was saying. I mean, Jermon had 4 interceptions last year. 3 of them were essentially on jump balls in the end zone. The other one being, I guess, whoever Tennessee played the game before Vandy, the nobody they played.
UTSA, I think it was.
Yeah. I wanted to say
Skylar
UT Martin
Thompson or something.
And then Jackson Arnold threw a ball in his chest in zone coverage against, just didn't see him and threw it directly at him against Oklahoma. So, it is tricky, especially for corners to get interceptions. Safeties, I think it's a lot more anticipating or being in the right spot, maybe on an overthrow. Corners are tricky. I mean, it's 3 of them last year were him just going up and making plays on one-on-ones on deep balls.
And again, I think even if he misses some time, he can still go out and make those plays when guys want to go to their number one receiver. Just to kind of parlay that into breakout player, I've been talking about him a lot throughout this offseason. I believe he was the one who William Inge called the Incredible Hulk. I'm still going with Edwin Spillman. I know he's not going to be a starter.
Yep.
You obviously have 2 extremely good starters right there. And this does feel like the safest breakout answer you could ask for. But Edwin Spillman just feels like a guy who's hungry, who's ready to go, who is athletic, who's got good instincts. And when he gets on the field, I don't think there will be too big of a drop-off, even when we've all been collectively praising Tennessee starting linebackers with T-Lander and Carter about what they can do. I just think that Edwin Spillman just seems like a guy who once he steps on the field, I think he's got everything that he wants to go out there and prove, and he's a great pick for that. We are at the end of our tale, though. We are just over an hour. I said the running backs one was the hardest. I think this was the hardest for me. I'm not necessarily a hot take guy, as I think longtime listeners of the podcast would know that. I go with playing it safe more often. But what's a bold prediction? What's maybe it even spins into hot take a little bit when you think about this Tennessee football season? That's kind of how we'll wrap things up. So whoever feels good about what they want to say right here, go for it first.
You want Sylvia or me?
I'll give you one that previews our next show of game by game predictions as well. Tennessee's beating Alabama on the road this year.
Whoa!
I am not buying the stock.
They're
in Tuscaloosa.
massive dogs.
Wow. I am not buying Kalen DeBoer as the long-term. I think Kalen DeBoer is a fine coach. I'm not buying him as the long-term answer in Tuscaloosa with all the expectations that are there. I'm certainly not buying Ty Simpson as a positive starting quarterback in the SEC. Tennessee's going into Tuscaloosa. They're doing what they should have done last time they were there in 2023 and win that football game. And Tennessee is going to snap a streak where they have not been able to win there in so long. They finally got over the hump with Josh Heupel in terms of just winning the game. Now they're going to go out there, win in Tuscaloosa, and all of a sudden, you're looking at a 2-game win streak with the game coming back to Neyland Stadium next year. Does Tennessee all of a sudden start to build a little bit of a win streak going in that rivalry?
All right, I'll go. And Rick, you just touched on it. I don't know about start. By the end of the year, the final 6 games of the season, Edwin Spillman will play more snaps than Jeremiah T-Lander.
Okay.
I just think his ceiling's higher this year.
I was going to say, are you higher on Spillman or lower on T-Lander, or is it maybe somewhere in the middle?
More higher on Spillman, a little bit of both. I just think Spillman has a lot higher ceiling than T-Lander does. Which I think T-Lander just kind of is what he is, which is a solid, good player. But I don't think he has like all SEC gear in him. Maybe I'll be proven wrong there. Maybe I look like an idiot, but that would be my thoughts. And then the other one is, this isn't really a prediction, or I'm not even sure as much of a take. And I hit on it a little bit earlier. I just think I think with Jalen McMurray at star, Tennessee will be fine if Boo Carter's not out there. Like I think we will look back when Boo Carter inevitably enters the transfer portal in December and being like, that saga was overblown. He's talented, but Tennessee was fine there. It wasn't the end of the world. They got him back. things never clicked for him. Things never got going in the right direction. That's kind of the vibe I have. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, and his talent will just be so extreme that it overcomes a lot of what he's done to dig himself into a hole so far that he's got to get out of the play and play at a high level. But that's kind of a feel that I have. And I just think Jalen Murray's really solid. I think he was solid for Tennessee last year, and an underrated player.
Here's a take off your take. I think Tennessee will miss Boo Carter far more as a punt returner than a defensive back this year.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Especially like Jamal McCoy's out right now. Like, it's very tricky who returns punts for Tennessee.
Yeah, and it felt like it was like certainly Boo Carter at least houses one this year if he returned every punt for Tennessee. Like, he was dynamic last year. You just couldn't bring one to the house. This year felt like at least one, maybe two. Without him, feels like they'll probably just play it safe more often than not instead of actually returning those punts.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, look, Boo Carter could still play a good bit. He could still return punts. It just doesn't feel like that's going to be the case against Syracuse right now. And maybe that changes by Georgia week 3, and he hits the ground running. But that's just general vibes low on what Boo Carter's impact could be right now, I think.
That's a good. Sure. I said that like he's gone. He is on the team. I just think if you had to pick one area that you would miss him more if he wasn't on the team, I think it would be punt returning.
Agree.
Boy, my bold prediction, I sort of alluded to it earlier. I think that Joey Aguilar is going to pan out for the 12-game stretch. I think that he is going to be a guy who can keep Tennessee in a conversation towards the end of the year. And I don't exactly know what that looks like just from a hot take perspective, whether that's, he's a top 5 quarterback in passing yards, or he's a top 5 rating, or maybe it's something like what Sylvia was alluding to. He goes and takes Tennessee into Tuscaloosa and he wins a game. But I think that something about Joey Aguilar is going to pan out for this 12-game stretch. And again, maybe I'll be completely wrong on it, and you'll get to a point in the season later in the year where Tennessee says, "Hey, this guy is done from our team. Thank you for your service, for these other 8-9 games, whatever it's been, but we want to move on from there." I don't have a great one. I don't have a great hot take.
See, I was trying to give you
struggle with those.
I was trying to give you an outright because I'm not much of a hot takeist either. On the outline, I didn't even write the word "hot." Never entered. It was just a take / prediction.
You did.
It didn't have to be.
You did do that.
Said anything.
And then you're just like hot take. Take.
Here's my take. Josh Heupel will be the coach after this year. Still, like, you could have went with something easy.
That
like
is a take. That is a take. I feel like we've been going takes for the last 40 minutes. I'm taked out at this point. It's not my game. It's not my strong set.
Here's a take. Here's a take that I'm not making, that I flirted with. I just couldn't do it.
Okay.
And that's Ethan Davis leads Tennessee tight ends in receiving yards.
I like that.
And I thought about even going second on team, but I just can't do it.
I'll take dibs on that one.
You get dibs on that one?
Yeah, I'll take dibs.
If you have to pick a take that you probably still are a little hesitant on, I love that take because it could very well happen.
Ethan Davis is a little bit of Tennessee Kyle Pitts, where it's just like it could be the year. It could be a big year for Ethan Davis.
Yeah, big year.
But it's like out of necessity. It could maybe not a big year, but he could just have to play more this year out of necessity.
Let me play devil's take advocate here. How about Deshaun Brame plays the second most snaps of all tight ends this season?
Yeah.
I think that's I wouldn't bet on it, but I think that's a possibility.
Let me throw another one at you. Jack Van Dorselaer plays the second amount of snaps.
That's a little spicy. I don't
see. Here's where I get there though.
Okay.
I think Jack Van Dorselaer is more of a blocker than Deshaun Brame is.
Okay.
And if it's more all around ready right now.
Yeah, and that's my thing is like that's the thing. If even Davis doesn't play the second most snaps, it's because he still can't block. Is Van Dorselaer or not Van Dorselaer? Is Deshaun Brame really already a better blocker than him when he kind of has the same build and like reputation as a really good pass catcher that basically just played receiver in high school coming in?
Yes.
If it's someone other than that, I think it's Van Dorselaer, who is more well-rounded from Rick's neck of the woods in a good solid blocking tight end for a freshman.
South Lake Carroll.
The way I keep looking at it though is if you're going, I keep thinking they're just going to be 12 personnel so much just because of the receiver numbers. And if you're doing that, you essentially just want a big wide receiver that can block a little bit, which is why I think if there is a year in an offense for Ethan Davis and Deshaun Brame to be huge pieces, it is this year where you essentially, hey, we're going to have you block a little bit. You're going to have to play tight end, right? Like that's still definitely a part of what you're going to be doing on the field. But also go play a little slot receiver, Go out there and just catch some passes.
Yeah.
Let me give a take I don't believe in at all.
Oh, okay.
I want to throw it out
Reverse
there.
psychology here.
And this is my Chase Thomas take. This is my take for Chase Thomas. If he's still listening, if he's made it an hour and 11 minutes, Tennessee's top 3 receiving, the 3 players that lead Tennessee in receiving yards, all from the state of Georgia. Mike Matthews, Ethan Davis, Travis Smith.
I almost wanted to go with the
Take
Travis
take.
Smith take at some point. That was good.
We're like 1 injury away from that being feasible.
Sure. But that would also piggyback on the other hot take that you had, and that Ethan Davis does kind of step up, and so it's almost a double take. You need one. You can't have one without the other sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah. I do want you guys to know though that I did not come necessarily empty-handed. Shumpert, if you need to leave for the final 2 to 3 minutes of the show, you're more than welcome to. I did ask AI. I did ask AI to give me a take.
I'm gonna head out.
And here's what happened.
Boo this guy. Tomatoes.
The hot take was Tennessee will be the most physical defense in the SEC. And you know what I said? I said
that doesn't
no.
make sense.
I said
you can't even quantify that.
I said that's
literally unquantifiable.
No, it quantifies it at some point. I'm just not going to read it out. But I said no. I said, what did I say? I said that's not going to work. Give me something hotter. Give me a hotter take. And it said, let's crank up the spice level. Hot take. George McIntyre will take the starting quarterback job by October. And lead Tennessee to upset Alabama.
Okay, well, I don't know about that one.
It's a double hot take. It sort of amended for its past sins of the physical defense comment.
I'll give AI credit.
What would you grade both of those?
That's horrible because it's being bold for the sake of being bold. It's not given a take. It's not given a take for the love of the game. The love of the game take is one that you believe, at least to a certain degree. The AI clearly does not believe that. It just is being bold for the sake of being bold.
Well, see, I love that George McIntyre becomes starter in October because I kind of laid out that scenario earlier.
You did.
But it would be post-Alabama game. They're not throwing George McIntyre in there first start in Bryant
for Tuscaloosa.
No. That's not happening. AI doesn't know that. AI doesn't understand these things.
The thing is that AI had to pull from somewhere. And I'm not going to go back and look through where it pulled from, but it did pull from somewhere. So I don't think it's just pulling these out of thin air. I think it took something it saw somewhere. So maybe someone's got that out there. But that wraps it up with some AI hot takes. There you go. New segment of the week. We'll have it every single show.
No, it is not.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll have it every single show.
You can do that on your own time. Me and Shumper will leave the call.
We'll
I gave you a chance to leave the call.
We'll have 2 podcasts, the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass podcast with Ryan Shumpert and Ryan Sylvia, and the RTI AI off with Rick Butler and AI. RT, yeah, that's good. That's actually
RT parentheses A in parentheses I.
We might actually have something with that. That name might be too good that we can't not use it. I won't be a part of it, but that name's electric.
I'll write that article every week. What does AI think is going to happen in this Tennessee football game? RTAI. And we'll get something going with that. Anyways, any other final thoughts? It's obviously been a big show. It was probably our longest show of the fall slate so far. But we had huge news to talk about, the report that Tennessee quarterback Joey Aguilar is taking over as the starting signal caller for Tennessee's offense coming up when the Vols take on Syracuse in game 1 of the regular season on October 30th in Atlanta, Georgia. Any other kind of final thoughts as we wrap this thing up?
My final thought, Joey Aguilar has quite the opportunity on his plate in terms of if he is even kind of good, Tennessee fans will rally around him to an unbelievable degree as someone that came in and, like, let's say they go 9-3 and he starts all 12 games, that he came in and he saved the season. He came in, he saved those type of things.
Yes.
He has an unbelievable opportunity if he is just good, not even great, to be like a folk hero in Knoxville.
A folk hero. That's a good way to put it.
Put him on the mural at the hotel.
Yeah.
What's the hotel called? The Peyton Manning's hotel?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
The Graduate.
The Graduate. Put him on the mural on the side of Graduate.
Good point. Good point. If Joey Aguilar has better statistics at any point in the season than Nico Iamaleava, people will build a statue. People will love it, and we won't not hear about it on social media. So, anyways, all right. Well, like we said early in the show, we're going to come back either later in the week or early next week or at some point here. We only got 12 days till kickoff, so we need to get this done at some point soon. You heard a little bit of a tease to it at some points throughout the show today, but we're going to come back with a Tennessee Volunteers season preview where we go through all 12 games, maybe even throw some bowl projections there at the end and kind of give a grade on those before the Tennessee football season coming up. It'll maybe be a little bit easier now that we know that Tennessee's starting quarterback, or at least who it's going to be. But be on the lookout for that episode as well. Also, be on the lookout the same day that this is dropping, which is Monday, August 18th. Be on the lookout for the latest episodes of Pancakes and Bacon, where our guys Reed Bacon and Kyler Curbison are going through and doing their own podcast and their own preview, and they got all their stuff going as well. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I haven't listened to it yet. It only came out just about 30 minutes before we recorded. It's longer than 30 minutes, so I'll be listening to this as I edit ours. But be on the lookout for Pancakes and Bacon. And then lastly, Sylvia, it's just me and you left. Hey, WATE Tennessee football season preview. It's on the app. It's on the television app. So make sure you go to your smart TV and you download the WATE app. And at some point here in the near future, you will be able to watch our 30-minute preview there alongside Sam Rothman and Casey K. I don't believe it's out yet at the time of this publication, but stay tuned to RockyTopInsider.com as we will bring you the latest about when that is coming. I am now out of breath. Ryan, have I missed anything on our way out?
I think you got it all. I think that's it. We're counting down the days to football season here. We're right around the corner. So it's never a better time to check out RockyTopInsider.com. I guess I'll just say that.
That's right. Ryan Schumpert at rshump00. That's SCHUMP. At Ryan T. Sylvia. That is him right there. Our good friend Jack Foster is at Jack Foster Media. And then myself, I am at Rick_Butler. As always, though, just make sure you're checking out at RockyTopInsider.com or at RockyTopInsider on all 5 social media platforms. That's Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And then, of course, checking out RockyTopInsider.com each and every day for the latest Tennessee news, notes, and coverage. So it was a long episode. If you made it to the end, thank you very much. Be sure to lock in for this Tennessee football season. We'll bring you more real soon. Thanks for listening to the RTI Press Pass Podcast.